This is a Squiz podcast. We're your shortcut to being informed.
Our podcast today is brought to you by HubSpot. We all need a bit more breathing room in our workdays, and HubSpot gives it to you. Breeze, their built-in AI, takes care of the busy work so you can focus on growth. Welcome to The Call Sheet, the podcast that goes behind the scenes of the Australian entertainment industry, meeting the creative minds giving shape to our culture. I'm Bryce Corbett.
Marker.
If you've paid any attention to the Australian book world in the last 10 years, chances are you'll know Trent Dalton. He's the best-selling author behind Boy Swallows Universe, All Our Shimmering Skies, Love Stories, and most recently, Lola in the Mirror. His novels have struck a real chord, and maybe that's because they're so closely tied to his own very Australian, very Brisbane story. His work has been adapted into rave-reviewed plays, and he was also an executive producer on the Netflix series based on his book Boy Swallows Universe, which just happens to be the most successful Australian show ever to have appeared on the Netflix platform. And now he's just announced a new book, Gravity, Let Me Go, and it'll be released in October. So, as well as being prolific, Trent Dalton knows a thing or two about what it means to reach the top of the pop culture pyramid and become a fixture in how we entertain ourselves, and in a very public way. And so that's what I wanted to talk to him about. How did it happen? What does it feel like to hit that kind of high? And when you've achieved all you've ever wanted and more, what do you do next? Trent Dalton, welcome to The Call Sheet.
Oh, Bryce, it's an honour to be here. Really happy to be here.
I'm curious, do you now describe yourself as a journalist or an author?
Oh, man, such a great question. I remember the dilemma, like, what do you put on your passport, you know? And it's like, I used to have the dilemma where what do you put on the bottom of your emails?
Okay.
And I used to never say, I never even said journalist. Mm-hmm. Because it was weird. I was like, I'm just a feature writer. You know what I mean? I'm not quite like.
And what's the difference?
Well, I always saw these great crime reporters that across the newsroom and court reporters, and I'd see these Hedley Thomases and like these literally people I would later sit opposite.
Yeah.
And I'd see them from afar in my early days. And they'd be cracking some massive story, and I'd hear the ripples through the newsroom. This is at the Courier Mail. And I was over on a magazine called Q Weekend, which is at the far end of that news bureau, and I'm like, oh, look at those real journos over there. You know what I mean? So I'd put Trent Dalton, feature writer, Q Weekend, and it's such a thing that I would do. It's about this weird kind of constantly trying to bring myself closer to the earth and not bring myself to the stars. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I don't know why that is. And I think it's maybe a youngest brother. I'm the youngest of four boys. And it's just a very interesting thing. So it's, you know, and like I have to really realize, like, if I'm not a writer, I don't know what I am, but I'm a writer, you know, and it's beautiful even to say that. But I reckon it's taken 6 books for me to say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just because if I start calling myself that, then that's when someone's going to tap me on the shoulder and go, sorry, mate, you're not.
Well, you know, we're famously averse to being a tall poppy in this country. Does that play into it somewhat?
I think so. And it's also definitely, I'm very fearful of my own ego and my own ambition. Like, I'm really conscious of it. Like, it's the thing. I know I've got this secret ambitious streak, Bryce. Like, I've got this real secret ambition in me, and it can be all consuming. And so I think I'm telling myself things like that to just make sure the beast that is my kind of inner drive doesn't fully take over. Because you know, that can be a thing, and I've seen that, and that's when you become a dickhead, you know that. And it's like, my wife and I have this. We had to do a trust or something, and the accountant's like, "What do you want to call it?" And we're like, DBAD, and it's called "Don't Be a Dick." Yeah, DBAD. Yeah.
So I want to come and explore this idea around ambition in a moment. But first of all, I think just for context, tabloid newspaper newsrooms, they're a famously tough environment, especially in the days when we started out.
Yeah.
And you strike me as more sensitive than your average hack. So how did you fare in the famously cutthroat tabloid newspaper room?
Man, great question. I tell you how I got by, and it was through my absolute puppy dog enthusiasm. So I was sensitive and still am incredibly sensitive. When I was a kid, I hated I was really embarrassed by the way my brothers used to call me, my nickname was Koala because like I was the youngest brother, and which is like koala protected species, right? But it was deeper than that. There was a cartoon called, you might remember, Blinky Bill.
I do.
And so whenever I'd about to be crying, they'd bring on they'd call forth the waterworks by singing in unison, "Hello, Blinky Bill," because I'd start blinking and I'd be like fighting my tears. And I'd do this Blinky Bill thing, and I really like they knew exactly. If you want to get me, just get me at my tear streak, my waterworks, the ease at which the waterworks get turned on in my sort of soul.
Triggered by something that you saw, or
some
injustice
sort of
you felt
injustice, like an injustice
that you had suffered, or
that I'd perceived injustice or something, But also, if I felt like I hurt someone, Bryce, like that, like I'm 46 now and I've analysed all of this a lot. I thought about this because I write about this stuff all the time. So I'm always thinking about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that was actually my secret weapon as a journo. And that was why I remember distinctly David Fagan, who was the editor of the Courier Mail when I sort of started there.
Yeah.
When I was probably, well, even before that, I was on this magazine called Brisbane News. And the thing I started doing was like, that was just a free glossy colour mag that you'd go in the fancier suburbs of Brisbane, they'd receive it in their letterboxes. But I'd try and do some really deeper stories. I started to realise I could go and do some deeper things and kind of use this weird sensitivity that I had that I was so embarrassed about became the thing that like I realised like was keeping me in the chair in someone's living room, Like It was like I was really wanting to learn about, there's deeper stuff too. Then by the time I get to the Courier Mail, I'd go do stories on like domestic violence or drug addiction or alcoholism. I'm like, well, that's the shit I saw when I was a kid, like I saw all that when I was.
And you were drawn to those sorts of stories?
Totally drawn, subconsciously drawn to those stories. And it was that sensitivity that was always making me knock on those doors gently and maybe trying to get through the door, which was not always easy to do. And just really, I'd really let rip with that sensitivity in terms of how I'd be standing on a person's doorstep. And that's sort of how I got to mix it with the real hard-nosed journos. It's like we get so caught up as journalists in what's my 10 or so questions I'm going to have up my back pocket. It's not even that. It's how well am I going to be willing to listen to that person.
Yeah. And very few people listen well. I don't know if you find in social situations, but you can find yourself suddenly getting to the core of somebody and they'll suddenly be telling you a story and then realising they've never told this story to anyone before and wondering why they're telling you.
Yeah.
It's because you actually have asked questions and shown genuine interest.
And people go deeper. And I had this thing, it's like I am not interested in Danish furniture. I'm not interested in real estate. I'm not interested in the brand of the vase that's sitting on the table. I'm interested in your sorrow. I'm interested in your heartbreaks, and I'm interested in the people you've lost and what you did with that and where that is stored inside you, And it's like, that's a much more interesting dinner party if you can go to those places very quickly.
100%.
Journos are sometimes pretty good at just going there pretty quick because we're kind of used to listening to that stuff.
But why the darkness? Why drawn to that, do you think?
Oh, I just think because I think that is because it's in my blood. I was raised by an incredibly dark but beautiful man. My dad is just a dark dude who's into Cormac McCarthy and Leonard Cohen songs. And I just think it's something that I am always fascinated by and always consciously sort of processing and observing in myself, and my dark streak, which is absolutely real and like, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's like, but also, I was raised by people who had their own dark streaks, and I'm fascinated by those people and, those people who perhaps felt as though they did some wrong things in their lives and maybe did, and but still those people were the absolute lights in my life. And so I'm oftentimes, back in journalism, I was always trying to work out why if I could work out why that person did the thing they did, which is like it might be some criminal story that I'm writing for Q Weekend or the Weekend Ozmag, that might help me work out why the people in my life did the things that they did. Yeah.
And I think that is there an element too that humans are capable of the most incredible things at the hardest points in their lives. That's the thing that always fascinates me.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I know it's a bit of a cliche, that thing of like, you know, it used to be sometimes an entry point in which how you might jag a story like that. You'd go, oh, look, I'm just trying to sort of, this is the dorky way of saying it, but like I'm trying to find some sort of positives in this, or what can we learn from this, or whatever. But it's true. Like there is a lot of humanity to be learned, a lot of life stuff to be learned in those dark times. And so, you know, I absolutely got my best lessons in dark times, and it's you know, the time that have absolutely shaped who I am. And yeah, so I'm deeply fascinated by it. But also at the same time, it's story. It always gets back to story, and you know, darkness is such a part of storytelling. You need Darth Vader as much as you need Luke Skywalker, you know, and so it's like, and if Darth Vader's deeply interesting as we know he is, that just makes your story better. And so what I mean by that is I'm just as fixated on all the murders that have happened in Brisbane City as I am by all the beautiful family stuff that's happened.
So of course you plied your trade as an award-winning feature writer, and then at which point did you sit down and go, "There's this novel in me that's just bursting to get out"?
That book, Boy Swallows Universe, you know, I wrote it when I was 38, and it took 37 years to write. Like you know, or maybe, you know, ever since my first memory was when I was about 3. So whatever that is, I've probably been thinking about that book. But I remember just one example of when I really thought I need to write it. I remember this great journo friend of mine, Michael McKenna, legendary, you know, crime journo on The Australian, and, you know, just written for everyone, you know, and one of those great Aussie crime journos. And he was sort of maybe standing in as a cos or something that day.
That's Chief of Staff for those listening at home.
And I just remember him shouting to another journo, like, do we have a contact? I won't say this person's name because it's just, but this person was like one of the darker criminals and he'd been up on a retrospective murder charge. And Michael shouted this name across the bureau, and I just sunk into my chair secretly, and I'm over there writing my flowery feature writing stuff. I sunk into my chair just going, oh, man, I played with that guy's kids when I was a kid.
This is awkward.
Yeah, and I realised in that moment, I was raised as a footnote to a really bigger Queensland crime story. You know, like I was raised as a small, in a family that was just a small micro part of a much darker, bigger crime story that was taking place, which is Queensland in the 1980s. It was around that time I was doing a story on Bill Lawry. I had to do a profile on Bill Lawry, the great Australian cricketer Bill Lawry, and I got to go down and chat to Bill Lawry in his home. It was unbelievable. And I came back and I went down. The Courier Mail has an archive, like a library archive run by these amazing librarians, and I'd always be in there just looking up some historic thing. And they have collected over, you know, decades a manila folder of any person of note. So of dark note or light note or sporting success or business success. And I went to get the Bill Lawry folder, and then I thought, hang on, this comment that Michael had really got me thinking about my past and my childhood. And I got thinking about this guy that my brothers and I used to hang around our house when we were kids. Because my mum had fallen in love with this heroin dealer, and who was the first father figure I ever had in my life. And I love this guy dearly to this day. But he had a friend named Slim Halliday. And Slim Halliday, to me, was just this sort of babysitter figure who would let me hang around him when my mum was out and stuff. And, like, he'd let me sit in his Toyota Land Cruiser and stuff and, like, honk the horn. And then I was like, Oh, but that's right. My brother Joel told me once that he was a killer who did 30 years in Boggo Road Men's Prison. And
they might have a folder on him down
here.
They
might have a folder, right? And I go down, and I swear to God, Bryce, the folder was like as thick as Bill Laurie's cricket bat. Like it was just so thick, and it was chock-a-block with these 1960s front page Courier Mail, like Slim goes away, Slim, the Southport taxi driver killer, because he killed a taxi driver. So I'm reading all these articles, and then I see a picture of Slim as I knew him in the 1980s, and he's given an interview, and it's just the most fascinating interview. Yeah. He's talking about all the stuff he learned in prison. He's talking about all the great lessons from the books, the countless books he read in prison. Yeah. He's quoting poetry, he's quoting, these incredible poems that he learned by heart in prison. I was like, oh man, that's that guy. Like I really cared for that guy when I was a kid. I was like, wow, yeah, Slim's in my life. I remember the times when my brother would tap me on the shoulder and we'd go down into this guy, let's call him my stepdad. He was essentially like my stepdad. My mum and this guy never married, but he was like my stepdad for like about 6 years. And my brother, we went down into basically Joel found a secret room that was built under this guy's main bedroom in his house.
Amazing.
Where we were living out at Ipswich. Yeah. And there was nothing inside that room but a rotary dial red telephone. And I just had these just flashes. And I remember when I was just having drinks with my brothers, like in our 20s, and I'd go like, do you guys remember that room?
Did that happen?
Exactly. It was all that stuff. And Joel's like, yeah, man. Anyway, that to me when I was a kid was like, Narnia. Like that was like that was like a portal to a whole, like I could not believe that when I saw that as a kid. I was like, there are so many things the adults aren't telling me about. Yeah. And then I remember Catherine Milne from HarperCollins. She read a feature I'd written in the Weekend Oz mag, and she just sent me an email and she said, I want to come up to Brisbane and have coffee with you and talk about maybe you writing a book. And she had all these, we caught up for coffee. She had a couple of ideas of non-fiction books because she was just like, oh, you're a journo guy.
You're a journo, that's some ghostwriters.
Exactly. It was that type of thing maybe. And I was like, oh, great. I was always thought like, it'd be nice to write really long like that. And then I just went, actually, Catherine, there is a book I want to write, and I've sort of been thinking about it on and off for years, and it's about a boy who finds this secret room. He's been raised by heroin dealers. He finds this secret room with his brother, who I already knew I was going to do as an amalgam of my 3 older brothers. With his brother, he finds this secret room. There's nothing inside this secret room but a rotary dial red telephone, and on that telephone, he learns that his mum's going to take her own life on Christmas Day in Boggo Road Women's Prison. And
she was hooked?
Yeah. And she's like, yeah, write that one.
Do that.
Yeah, that became Boy Swallows Universe. Yeah.
Not only did it become Boy Swallows Universe, but like one of the most successful books ever
to
have been published in this country.
Thanks.
And then turned into a Netflix series, which became the most successful Australian series on Netflix, the global platform. Well, I mean, how do you even begin to process the success you've had with that book and Netflix series?
Like if you're a person like me, Bryce, you go deep on it. Like you go really deep. Like it's that whole book is all about a boy trying to find ways to turn curses into blessings. And I genuinely believe like that whole thing, like, I was always thinking, I had a secret belief when I was a kid, Bryce, that like so much sorrow or so many sort of whatever, it wasn't every night was harrowing by any stretch. It was beautiful most of the time, but there were just dark nights. And I remember distinctly as a boy thinking this is all heading somewhere. Like I generally had whatever it is. Wow. And I had a ridiculous notion that the Dalton boys were special. It was just this amazing sort of, I think within us, just this secret knowledge that like we were living lives that were different to everybody else. And so, you know what I mean? Like you just inherently get a sense that that's special. You know what I mean? Even though it's dark, it's like so dark special.
And so the success then of Boy Swallows Universe, what in some ways you felt was destined because there was this sense that this is all going to be worth it in the end?
Oh, well, I never thought that it would go where it went. And I was fine with that because it was like, I was very happy as a journo on the Oz and I had a dream job writing for the Weekend Australian mag, which was, my dream job.
Yeah.
And so I was okay. If you talk about destiny, the success wasn't predestined, but I was destined to write that story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is how I feel. Like,
Sure.
it's like I just feel like I was put on this planet to write that story. And if that was the only thing I'd ever write, that I would be so fine with that, Bryce. Like, that's how powerful, because
I think 99% of the population, if that was the only thing they'd ever written, they would be so fine with it. And of course, then your second novel, All Our Shimmering Skies, was just follow-up tome. The second book, Pressure, after having published Boy Swallows Universe. This is like second album pressure. Like, must have been immense.
No, it was awful. Terrible.
Really?
No, it's no doubt about it. Yeah. But it's only stuff you're putting on yourself. Like, no one else cares. You know what I mean? And this is where, and then I realized it's like, get over yourself, idiot. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, poor you have to write a second book, like, oh my God, could there be any worse champagne problem? Like, it was a real great realization I had one day. It was like, you idiot, you never thought you'd even,
it's a lonely process though, writing a book.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
There's a lot of dark moments of the soul where you go, this is rubbish. Why am I even, did you encounter that with your books?
For sure. And I still have. So I just finished my 6th book, and it's like incredible self-doubt and the equal measures of dread and wonder that comes with the publication process. But if you hold true to the joy of storytelling, that's the thing that always got me through, was just like, oh man, just get over it. Like, this is everything you ever dreamed of. And and the funny thing about anything I've written, All Our Shimmering Skies, was me just still processing the same stuff though. Like, so I had a very deep reason to write that story, and it was, all related to the darker villains in my real life who become villains in my book. And I'm kind of like, there was a really strong reason for me to keep turning up to that desk, and it's sort of like, so if you find those deeper, which is why I like to write from truth a lot. Like, it has to have some sort of grain of truth in these books, because that's what will actually eventually keep you at the desk and destroy all that self-doubt and all that other ridiculous stuff.
A quick message now from HubSpot. In the age of AI, you need business software that is easy to use and actually delivers results fast. That's what makes HubSpot's approach to AI so refreshing. Do more with less stress, thanks to Breeze, their suite of AI tools. Breeze agents handle busy work for you, creating marketing content, finding sales leads, and handling customer service questions. And Breeze Copilot gives you the right info at the right time, so you always stay 2 steps ahead. Customers are selling faster and saving hours on work every week. Visit hubspot.com/AI to get started today.
So let's turn to process, because I'm fascinated to know, where and how does Trent Dalton write?
Downstairs, I write. I have journo hours, very much like journalists, sort of 9 to 5 type hours, and I'm just used to that. And it's very, it's been very, as a bureau is a really great place for a writer of any kind to start. I just think news bureaus are such great writing classes, like, oh man, like self-doubt and writer's block and will my second book work? Like, mate, you start thinking like that in a news bureau, like, you're going to lose your job. You know what I mean?
Indulgence you cannot afford.
Exactly.
Because the printing presses are rumbling.
Exactly. Like, have you, I'm sorry, there's just no writer's blockage in journalism, and it's such a wonderful way to be. Like, we don't get caught up in the nuances. We get caught up in the power of the story that we feel the world needs to read. And it's like, you just got to remember that a bit. But also the physical nature of just being there for like 8 hours, or, I tend to do, I can only probably I go to about 9 till 3, because anything after that's a bit mushy. Like, it just turns sort of, brain goes a bit foggy. And so you're not really writing anything great after 3 o'clock, I find, for myself. Yeah. But after that, I'm really happy if I've written, from 9 till 3 pretty consistently. With
so we're in an office downstairs, a little spare bedroom
downstairs.
Office,
So I've got a poster that's a mix of Charles Darwin and Pearl Jam. It's a real wonderful mix of my heroes.
Explain that.
It's a Pearl Jam poster, but it's a tribute to Charles Darwin.
Okay.
And yet it's a promotion for a Pearl Jam concert.
Okay. And that specifically,
So I was like, that's my poster.
Why is that your writing poster?
A mix of science and the soul. You know, this incredible thing called music, which I think is the closest thing we've got to, accessing those parts of ourselves. And then, the idea of, Darwin sort of going, hey, remember where we all come from, and that you were part of this incredible universe, this bigger, wonderful evolution. Yeah. And, so that's always sort of, given me excitement.
Yeah. You've talked about when you are writing, getting into a flow state. What does that feel like? Give us a bit of a description of the flow state.
There's a deeper even thing to that too. It's the flow state that leads you to places you thought you did not even realize you had in your head.
Okay.
There's a turning point in Lola in the Mirror. And I remembered I got a phone call
Which
from
was your third novel?
Third fiction novel.
Yep.
And it was inside the flow state that led to this really cool moment that happens in that book. And it's just one of those moments where I just remember going, if you stay in the flow state for long enough, it will lead you to places that give you chills up and down your whole flipping body. And you go, but you've just got to be there in that meditative state of creativity that leads you to that place. And sorry, flow state is like, you are so inside your world. And even though my worlds are literally set in Brisbane and stuff, but I'm putting scenarios inside the city and inside my own head that I'm so in there that you could get lost in there and only come out when you get hungry, and it's sort of like that's like what I've heard surfers say, like they were exhausted, but they just stayed out on the waves because they were just in this absolute flow state of almost like a meditation of their beloved sport. I feel the same thing. I play touch footy all the time, and I just it's 40 minutes of flow state because I'm just not even, it's just the most Wednesday night D-grade touch football is just the place I'm looking forward to after a big writing day because it's just pure flow state. And it's that thing that you're trying to get to, but the wonderful creativity that lives inside that space is really powerful. I've started to realize, and I just distinctly remember there's this. I won't spoil for anyone who might want to read Lola in the Mirror, but it's this cool thing that happens where a girl, our hero girl, makes a realization that she had been seen at a space in time that she just didn't know this person that she's in love with had been actually seeing her, and she feels seen for the first time. And it's just, it was a hook of a narrative hook that I was just like, I never thought I'd sit down that day and get that. Yeah. But when that happens to you, it's an absolute eureka moment, and like it's a storyteller's eureka, and like that, man. This is where. Okay, let's remember the danger of this though. This is what I'm writing about in my latest book, Gravity Let Me Go. Is the same thing that heroin users talk about, like. It's the same space, right. And it's the same thing that gamblers on pokies. You go to a pokey den. I did a lot of stories on gambling addiction, and they say they're you go to one of those places. They go to the big sort of RSL pokey den. Well, it feels like a heroin kick. Like it's like the lights are turned down, and it's like. It's like you will stay in that flow. They're in a flow state. Yep. They're in a flow state. And it's like, so if you, that's a very addictive thing. You know what I mean? To sort of, and the danger is that you stay in your flow state up in the kitchen, I leave the rumpus room, but I'm still in the flow state. Yeah. And Fee's this is my wife Fee, is telling me something really important about parent-teacher night. And I'm still over here in flow state in my little world of storytelling. And I'm nodding,
saying,
I'm nodding.
Yep, got that. And then you walk away and you didn't get it.
And she's like, what is wrong with you? You're driving me crazy. And it's flow state. You're so right. It is actually I'm in that place that I love to go to.
It's hard to balance, isn't it? I mean, I remember reading, I think it was an English writer talking about the pram in the hallway and how difficult that had been as an interruption to him being a writer, because it's difficult to balance.
Oh wow!
The day-to-day, day-to-day managing and running of a household and being a husband and a father and being in the flow state to satisfy, the 25 million Australians who are waiting for your next book. No pressure.
No, and but I'll tell you, there's a flip side of flow state where you get something very real from, like this is where I talk about this thing, and like nothing I could possibly do in that rumpus room is better than what my eldest daughter is about to give me when I come home. I remember once coming home, I'd done a whole big like event tour based around Boy Swallows Universe, and I was telling all these really heavy stories behind the making of Boy Swallows Universe and stuff. And I remember I sat down with Beth, and Beth must have been like 12 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's your eldest daughter.
This is my eldest daughter,
yeah.
and she and I started weirdly just like, she's like, "Oh, what did you talk about, Dad?" And I was like, "Oh, well, Beth, what I talked about is that that stuff with Grandma and where all that comes from." And I was getting emotional just talking, and then she just grabbed me. She just went, hey. She saw it was sort of taking something out of me, like it was depleting me.
Yeah.
Right, I swear to God, this 12-year-old girl, she stroked my hair. Like I was probably exhausted or something. Like, and
sure.
she could tell I was like,
yeah.
She just went, hey. Like, it's making me teary now, man. Like, so, and she just touched a little bit of my hair, and she's like, "Hey, you don't have to be that guy here, Dad."
Oh,
that's what she said. You don't have to be that. You're just Dad to me. You don't have to be storyteller guy, Dad. Like it was like so beautiful. You know what I mean? It's like with them, you don't even have to find a flow state. Like,
of course,
they are flow. Like they are just pure flow. Like as you know, right? These kids of ours are just pure flow. Like and they live a life of pure flow. They don't even think about fear. And I know they have their fears, and teenage life, Lord knows, has its is filled with its fair share of fear. But just the way they approach their lives is just pure and all heart.
Yes.
And it's like
And you've talked. So you talked at the beginning about ambition and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is where your new book coming out in October goes to. Gravity Let Me Go is a realization that amongst all the striving, what actually mattered to you in life was upstairs in the kitchen.
Yeah. The old you climb to the top of the mountain and you realize the meaning you were looking for was way down in the cabin at the base of the mountain where you just said goodbye to your wife, and it's like, that's kind of so true and like so easy for me to forget. But it's all that ambition and all this sort of need, and also this weird storytelling addiction I've got that does get in the way of, these incredibly beautiful things. And so Gravity Let Me Go is all about a true crime journo who is become so obsessed with this scoop that is literally landed inside his letterbox. He becomes so obsessed with this true crime scoop of his lifetime that he's in danger of missing an even bigger scoop that's unfolding inside his house. And that scoop is related to the transformation of his wife, the ever-evolving nature of his wife. And there are things about her that he could not possibly comprehend. And that becomes really intriguing, hopefully to the reader, but it's very intriguing to me because I'm just sort of really interested in like long-term relationships and like how they evolve over time. I've been in one for 25 years now, and it's incredible to think about who I was at 20 when I met Fiona to who I am now at 46. And it's like, that's just an incredible series of evolutions that, is very powerful. Yeah. And I wanted to write about that, but along the way, what have been our own sort of ups and downs, and what sometimes are the ups and downs of any relationship is, oftentimes it could be this thing of you're really trying to chase one thing over here and maybe not putting focus on some things over here, which I was absolutely have been guilty of. And that's what scares me. I just go, well, what's driving that? I was like, what is it? And I was like, why? I'm really interested in myself. Like I'm still trying to work it out almost. Like I think it's to do with my past. And it's like if I got a clean break, I was like, I'm going to make the most of it because someone's going to come along and take it all away.
And is that what you think drives this relentless ambition that you say?
I think it's a part of it. I actually think it's a part of it. I think it's I think despite the fact I was being such a dick in school all the time, I was probably secretly creating a real drive inside myself to go, You know what I mean? And while I was pretending to be the least interested student of all time, I was actually probably building up to just wait and see. I'm gonna do some things that are gonna blow you all away. You know, it's like it's a weird thing I think I had, and I think it comes from all of that stuff.
And selling 1 million copies of your first novel and having that turned into a Netflix series that is the biggest one that's ever been on that particular platform.
Yeah.
That wasn't enough.
Yeah, right. I know what you're saying. Yeah, that's it. I know. Like, hello. Yeah, I know. That's so true, Bryce. It's like that's what Fee's always saying to me. It's like, that's not enough. Like, stop it.
Well, then I guess the next question is,
all good.
What will be enough, do you think?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, man, that's a great question. I mean, there won't be anything because it's like that great, it was Kurt Vonnegut, right? Have you heard that great thing? He's at a dinner party with someone and someone is just raving about his wealth and his genius and his success and the beautiful women he's had in his life. And Kurt Vonnegut's like, I don't know, maybe he's going through a rough patch where he's penniless and stuff. And he turns to this other writer friend and he goes, don't worry, man. We have something that he'll never have. Enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's like, that's a really cool thing to remember. And it's so true. It's so true. And please don't get me, like, I do know my curse, like I'm very aware of it and I snap out of that all the time, but it's like, yeah, I just find it very interesting. Like, I find it really interesting. Like, what am I trying to sort of prove?
Yeah.
What am I trying to prove, mate? And it's sort of like, my girls remind me. It's my girls who remind me all the time. It's like, mate, that's what Beth was saying. She was saying that day when I came. She's like, mate, you are so enough. Like, you're enough. Like, it's all good.
I want to just come. So, Love Stories, your amazing book, which was turned into a stage play, based on love stories that you collected from passers-by on your old Olivetti typewriter, sitting in King George Square in Brisbane. It displayed your skill at surfacing the essence of others' love stories. But would you say that it took you a little while to understand the essence of your own?
Oh, definitely. It was the great lesson of that whole project. I inherited this incredible 1970s Olivetti typewriter from my best friend's late mum, Kathleen Kelly, beautiful Brisbane woman who just loved words and loved typing and at her farewell, her funeral goodbye, Kel, my mate, leans into his car and he says, hey, on her deathbed, Mum had a couple of requests and one of them was to give you this typewriter. It was the most beautiful gift and I wanted to do something with it, in the heart of COVID. COVID had sort of lifted and we could all go out again and I went to the corner and interviewed 150 people about their love stories and it was genuinely towards the end, Bryce, that I realised because someone told me, asked me this, like, hey, mate, you've interviewed 150 people, but have you asked your wife what love is? I was like, damn it. There I go again.
You had forgotten something.
Yep, missing the whole point. And
so was that something that Fiona was forced to remind you of, or was it a realisation that came to you?
Something she does on a daily basis. And then we turned this thing into a play and the scriptwriter, Tim McGarry, he's like, why don't you and Fee help me with the writing? And I was like, yeah, actually, maybe we can create these characters that are kind of extensions of us, amplifications of us, and also a couple of other like couples we know, and talk about all the things that couples go through. And then, so what happened? It was so amazing. Fee and I took our laptops and we'd go to these bars and cafes across Brisbane for like 2 months, and we were just exploring 24 years. By then it's like been a bit longer now, but back then it had been about 24 years, and we were sitting down and I'd just go, all right, Fee, write down every time I ever pissed you off, or write down everything I do. Yeah, and it was just like, here's the list.
How long have you got?
How long have you got? Which was a bit funny. Yeah, it was like that was the natural gag. And then, but Fee wrote like the wind and just like wrote up this incredible
and of course,
character.
Fiona was a journalist.
Of course, like
and a very
great
accomplished
journo.
one.
Used to work on the Scotsman overseas, and like just a really cool. Oh well, I was working with her at Brisbane News, is where we met, and she's totally Kate. If anyone knows Boy Swallows universe, she's the Caitlin Spies character that Eli Bell falls, absolute head over heels for. And but we just went through this amazing purge and audit. It was an audit of our own marriage, and it was so powerful, man. Like this incredibly confronting thing where I was learning about every way in which I do frustrate her, but all the good things too. And it turned out to be like the most romantic thing we've ever done, to sit down and write a script together.
It's kind of unorthodox as marriage counselling goes, but
well, it was totally like, it was like the most amazing self-marriage counselling. And there were so many interesting things that happened in that conversation or in that writing process that were just too powerful and too close to the bone and uncomfortable. Like, you should write from a place of discomfort.
A message now from Aware Super, which has just made retirement even more affordable by lowering admin fees by up to 25% for their retired members. With cost of living front of mind for many Aussies, Aware Super is committed to keeping costs lower and delivering the benefits of being one of Australia's largest super funds. So, with more of their members' money staying invested and working hard, your retirement savings are in good hands if you're with Aware Super. With lower retirement admin fees, Aware Super is super helpful. Consider if Aware Super is right for you and the PDS and TMD at aware.com.au. Amount of fee reduction will vary based on account balance. Issued by Aware Super Proprietary Limited, trustee of Aware Super.
So, Trent, you've had multiple books turned into stage plays, and one of your books, of course, Boy Swallows Universe, famously turned into a Netflix series. What have you learned about both processes of turning a book into a stage production and turning it into a TV series?
Trust people far more talented than you. It's I was just blessed. That Netflix show, I tell you, mate, like I was blessed by the best talents in Australia. That process for me was such an act of trust where it's like Boy Swallows Universe got to the point where I'll tell you a thing, I have this message from a kid in South Korea. He DM'd me on Instagram and he said, "Hi Trent, I live in South Korea. I'm 15. You have no idea who I am, and I have no idea where Darra, Brisbane, Queensland, Australia is.
Yeah.
I would not know where to locate this place on a map.
Yeah.
But I just want you to know that I read the Korean translation of Boy Swallows Universe, and because I did, I have decided to live to adulthood."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was just like, that is just deeply powerful, right? And so it got a point with that Boy Swallows Universe story where it gets back to this word enough we would keep talking about. It's like that book had become enough. Like it was sort of, honestly, I was hearing things about that book that people would tell me at book events, or they'd just tell me what it meant to them. And on this deeper layer that I never anticipated, like that they would go, "Man, I read that book, and because I read it, I've decided to call my dad, who I haven't spoken to in 20 years.
Amazing.
Because I see him differently.
Mm-hmm.
I see that because that dad you wrote in that book reminds me of my dad. And that stepdad guy, far out, man, my guy he was into drugs and stuff as well. But he was beautiful, and I always worried about loving him. I thought it was wrong that I would love him and I was like, so many people had made these profound kind of things related to that book. And so I was always like, it could only go south. It could only go, and then these filmmakers came along and they said, "Trent, we're going to do something that is that book, but we're going to take it to places that you could not even put in that book."
And had you been approached before by others wanting to option it?
Yeah, totally. And
so the process, I guess, for people who maybe don't understand, you write a book, somebody will come along and option it, which means they say, I want to buy the rights to turn this into a film or a television show.
Oh man, it was like, you should have seen that process. I swear, Bryce, we were talking names such as Brad Pitt. I swear to God, I've got this amazing London agent. And,
you were talking, or the people who were approaching you?
The names that were coming. My wife Fiona and I were in our little. You got to understand. You imagine being in a living room. And I've just had a chat because I always have these late night chats because this amazing agent of mine's in London. So we're trying to get the time zones right. And then I come upstairs and I go, guess who made an approach about the boys? Well, as you know, Plan B, there's whispers that.
Wow. Which is like Brad Pitt's production company.
Pitt, and like that never eventuated, but it was just like that name was being thrown around. And then there's like Margot Robbie. And it was just, you can either because my other books have had the same thing, but not quite as like Boys Swallows Universe intensely, and this was pretty intense and wonderfully so. Like I'd have chats and people would sort of pitch me their thoughts about where the thing could go.
So they'd be like, all right, I see you're Brad Pitt and I raise it George Clooney.
Exactly. And so then my agent said, but hey, are you free to do a lunch with Joel Edgerton? And because he's really interested in this book. And I'm like,
he's an accomplished Australian producer.
Yeah, like really amazing guy, and who I really admired on a sort of an Australian storytelling level. And it was the GQ Awards, and it was the news articles all over the newspaper that Joel Edgerton had just been named GQ Man of the Year, and I was literally flying to have breakfast with him the next morning. I was like, we catch up in Bondi, and I'm like, hey Joel, congrats on being Man of the Year. That's amazing. And he's like, mate. We sit in this Bondi coffee shop. This guy, man, he goes, trying to read your book. He goes, have a look at this. He pulls out his phone. He goes, have a look at the first car, the Edgerton brothers. So for one, his name's Joel. My hero's name is Joel. That's my oldest brother. Yep. One of three heroes, Joel, Ben, Jesse. One of them's named Joel. And he goes, look at the car that the Edgerton boys drove around in when we were kids. And it's a sky blue Holden Kingswood, which is the car in Boy Swallows Universe, which is the car that the Dalton boys grew up in. He goes, look at my favourite rugby league team, Parramatta Eels. It's Eli Bell's favourite team. It was my favourite rugby league team before the Brisbane Broncos came.
Because you're a sucker for punishment. Yep.
Yeah. That's true. And then I tell you, man, I was so smitten with this man that by the end, so before I'd gone to the lunch meeting, my agent was like, now Trent, you can't do that puppy dog shit that you do. You've got to be real poker face. Like, you got to be tough on this. And
I bet you're real good at that.
There's a number of players vying for the rights of this thing. And we could really get a good, strong deal out of this. And I swear, it's been he's talking about Steven Spielberg stories, and he's got Star Wars stories.
Yeah, Joel's in some things.
Yeah, man.
He was in The Great Gatsby.
Right? Man. Buds with Leo, and and like Uncle Owen. He's Uncle Owen in Star Wars, for Pete's sake. And
he was sold.
And and then so I the lunch, the breakfast finishes, and I've just basically got one thing to do there, which is catch up with Joel in Sydney that time. And I'm straight back to the airport, and he goes, "I'll give you a lift back." And I was like, "Oh, stop it! You're not going to give me an airport
Uncle
lift."
Owen's driving me to the airport.
That's Uncle Owen is driving me to the airport, and I'll poker face Trent. I distinctly remember. I open the passenger side door, and I lean over the top of his beautiful car, and I go, "It's yours, Joel."
Just like that.
Yep. I was just, hey, if you want to make this thing, you go ahead and make it,
Could
Joel.
you hear the distant gnashing of teeth from London with your agent? Seriously, you had one job to do.
Bryce, swear to God, I got a phone call 3 days later, and it's like, Joel's team seems to think that it's all sewn up. I'm like, oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. It was the Uncle Owen factor.
I kind of, like, he was such a charming man. You should have seen him. He's so handsome. And then, but you know what? Guy made it. The guy made it freaking incredibly. You know,
Absolutely.
he stitched together. He kind of cracked the walls open to where Phoebe Tonkin wants to be up. You know what I mean? It's sort of like what he meant to it is just suddenly all these really amazing people are interested.
And important do you think that it was an Australian who took charge like that, given how Australian the story is?
Well, I'll tell you the two things that happened, and funnily enough, one was a Brit, Barrett Naluri, who's just this he's the guy who directed Life on Mars, which I loved, which is this Bowie series and sci-fi meets Bowie type stuff, and John Colley, who's a Scotsman. So they're both, but very strong. They've got Aussie hearts, these guys. Yeah. And it was so.
And they were the directors.
So Barrett was the lead director with Jocelyn Moorhouse.
Amazing Australian director.
Kim Morden. So basically, three amazing directors sharing the load of the episodes. But Barrett was like the showrunner, I guess you might call it. Yeah. And he's a Brit, but he read that book and he goes, the thing about it is, and he knows he's married to an incredible Australian. His wife's Australian, and he said, Trent, here's one thing I promise you. I promise you that we will remember our North Star is remembering that this isn't an underbelly story. This isn't like an episode of Underbelly. This is a love story. This is a story about a family that survives through love. Yeah. And I was like, Barrett, if you do that, mate, you have every blessing in the world from me. And then John Colley, this guy who wrote Master and Commander, John Colley's friends with Peter Weir, my absolute director hero. John Colley then calls me up, Bryce, and he goes, can I just talk to you about your life and your childhood and where this story came from? Amazing. We spoke for hours, man. Amazing. I told things to John Colley that I've never told anyone, and I will never forget the thing I loved about his scripts wasn't the sign of his writing talent was all over those scripts, but the sign of his character was all the things he left out of those scripts.
How do you mean?
Secrets I told him that would have been embarrassing to put in there, but figured into the story. Secrets to Blinky Bill about where Blinky Bill comes from, and just the nurture and care that he had. I'll tell you one thing, man. This has happened lately. So that whole series finishes with a scene. It's the most ordinary. It's not even a spoiler to say, but it's the most ordinary, boring scene you'll ever watch in that thing. The very final shot is a simple shot of an Australian family sitting down on a summer night in the suburbs and having dinner together. Yeah, man, I've watched that whole series once in full. I can't bear to watch the whole thing in its entirety. Really? I've watched this one scene at the very end. I've gotten it up. I'll watch the Broncos lose, and then on a Friday night, and then the kids have gone to bed, Fee's gone to bed, and I'll go to Netflix and I'll go to episode 7, go, skip, and then I'll sit. It's so bizarre, and I'll just sit back and watch this scene of this. It's a scene because it's everything that I ever wanted. It was a family together. I wrote that whole book. That it's not even in the book that it ends on this family dinner scene where the mum is back with the dad and the brothers are just laughing and we're just having one of those family ties dinners, and it was just like John wrote that, man. He wrote that. And it's like I weep when I watch that scene, and I was like, what a gift that I had to get via a Netflix streaming series. Like that, John Colley made my dreams come true. Barrett Naluri made my dreams come true. Barrett just said, I know what this, I swear those guys did that for me. That one little scene at the end, it's just a coda. It's just like it's a nothing scene, but for me, it's just the most monumental cultural thing I've ever seen in my life because it's it's us, man, and it's everything that I wish for. Yeah. Have you only watched it once? Yeah, in full once. Yeah, because it's too confronting to. Yeah. Oh, it's really awful in parts. Like I remember, it's like there's certain scenes of like domestic violence and stuff, which is very real for my mum. Like it's as real. But man, this is how great my mum is. Like she was like. I remember calling her and, talk about process. It's like, for me, that all those processes are all about the only question I ever ask is how will this affect? Now, it's a big question I had to ask when I wrote Boy Swallows Universe. How will this thing that I feel like I need to do, I need to get it out of my system, but how will that need affect the people I love? Yeah. Will it make them feel better or worse, and that's a highly complex thing. This beautiful 5 family members, I'm talking Fee, my 3 older brothers and my mum, who read that early manuscript, such a testament to who they are is like, I will suffer any awkwardness that comes with this because we're so proud of what you've done.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like what unbelievable. You know, my mum wasn't able to give us anything as kids, like but she gave me a story when I was 38 years of age. And it was the greatest gift she could ever have given me. She gave me to go for it, you know, and it's like, that's an incredible gesture that she gave. And then this poor woman has to then suffer the next phone call from her son is like, hey, Mum, they're gonna make a show of this stuff, and they're gonna send.
So you've heard of Netflix?
Exactly. They're going to send it to 75 countries around the world, you know, and it's like, and then Mum comes to opening night, man. She comes to opening night, and there's Simon Baker, and my mum. You know, have you ever seen Simon Baker in real life? So she's got Simon Baker playing basically one of the loves of her life, my dad.
Yeah.
And she's like just going, what is going on? And but for her to then watch that and just go, you know, I'm so proud of it, Trent. And then for her to give notes. So when I call, I go, Mum, so funny. I would say things like, Mum, you've got to come and watch 7 hours of this Netflix show. Yep. You know, I'll watch it with you just to make sure. And she, when we watched it, it was like, when we watched it all in full, it wasn't even a rough cut. It was very close to, you know, but it was like a chance where if there happened to be anything that, like, if there happened to be, that if I was executive producer on it, so I might have been to go, hey guys, that one little scene there, like that's too far. Yeah, that's too far. Maybe. I reckon Barrett, the beautiful man he is, would have listened and gone, listen, Trent, I'll try and I reckon, no doubt, he's an incredibly beautiful, caring guy, Barrett, and I reckon he would have. We didn't have to because I would go to Mum and go, hey, you good? Like, you good? Watching she's watching very dark things.
Worst time of her life. And then she'll just say stuff like, Trent, what about my life suggests to you that I can't take 7 hours of Netflix? And it's just like, hell yeah, man. Like, such a badass, you know? And it's just like, she's been in jail.
Exactly, man. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Perspective.
It was the same thing with this Queensland Theatre play they did. And she's like, Trent, what about my life makes you think I can't handle 3 hours of Queensland theatre? You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, that's true. That's
mums.
true. That's
Where would
true.
he be without them,
right?
huh?
Mums.
And so then on set, did you have any role in the creative process on set, or?
Well, they wonderfully so. They're like, okay. Well, the best thing that happened is that Michelle McGay, who's this incredible production designer, but art director. Sorry, she's the art director. And so basically the look of the whole thing is down to Michelle, and it looks incredible. It looks exactly like how I remember 1980s Brisbane. We were talking all the time about the lemon light of Brisbane at about 5 p.m. Yeah. I said, Michelle, if you can capture that and what it feels like to be outside in the lemon light in the city of Brisbane at 5 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, you'll get a lot of people. Like and a lot of Australians will understand that. You know, a lot of Australians will understand that lemon light, you know, and what it feels like to be in an Australian summer at 5 p.m., you know.
On your BMX riding down the street.
On your BMX. And that was really important to me. Like, please capture that light, because then you'll capture the beauty as well. You'll capture everything I loved about that book. Yeah. Is the beautiful sides of it. And, I'm talking banana paddle pops and sunny boys and all, and Pasito, cans of Pasito, and the joy of on a baking hot Brisbane day, and the highlight of your life is a 90-cent can of Pasito. Like that's just irreplaceable.
That? Yeah.
And, and she got that. And she was the brain behind The Matrix. She's the reason The Matrix looks
amazing.
You know, she's one of the many, there's incredible talent, as everybody knows, she was one of the people who made The Matrix look like everything we know. And she came up to Brisbane and she said, I need to do the Boy Swallows Universe tour with you. And so talk about my role. It was like, well, okay, Michelle, I'll take you to the house. So I went back. We went to the house where the secret room, knock on the door, and there's a bloke living there, and he's like, Boy Swallows Universe. I effing love that book. Yeah, he's a beautiful guy. And he takes us in. He's like, "Hey, you want to see the secret room? It's still there."
Wow.
It was a lot. So it was
so he knew that was the house.
He knew. He knew. Yeah. Well, he's still connected to my guy. Who?
Wow.
Yeah.
Was the phone still there?
My guy owns that house.
Amazing.
Still to this day.
Amazing.
He owns the house that. Yeah,
how has he not turned it into a tourist attraction? Or maybe he has.
He could well. He could almost. He could almost.
It's like a big red telephone out the front.
I know.
You know, like the big sheep or the big pineapple.
That's so true.
It's the big red telephone.
That is so true. That would be the funniest thing. Big red. The funniest thing though is what a writer does. I made that room has become so big in my brain, like bigger because I was 6. When I first saw it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean. And when you're 6, that room looked like the size of this room we're in, and it's half the size of this room.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's so amazing. Michelle's like, wow, it's so much smaller, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah, far out. But it's just the child, it's like,
of course.
But the catch was Michelle was so good at her job, Bryce, that when Fiona and I went to go on set, I swear to God, I go in, there were Rugby League Week magazines underneath the national TV that went clunk, 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 clunk. You had it with when you wanted to change the channel. There were those amber-coloured ashtrays that you'd remember from the 1980s, those glass amber-coloured ashtrays. Do you remember those? Yeah. There were the 4X styrofoam stubby coolers that you'd almost need 2 hands to carry them. They were so big, these things. Yeah, so in terms of, it was just an authenticity thing. And so I could say things like, please don't mistake the fact that I'm from, that I've got all these streaks in me, like I smoked 1,000 durries and I drank 1,000 4X beers. Please remember that we were reading Steinbeck at the same time. Yeah. So please, like sometimes, even in the script, and sometimes I'd hear some dialogue and it'd be that sort of bogan like, we're going down and shop to get some durries.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, let's not go too bogan here. Like,
nice.
Just because you're growing up in Brackenridge Housing Commission doesn't mean you don't know Tolstoy, And it's like, so it's like, it was that kind of thing I was trying to offer. It was just like, and that's what they kept in there. Like, so Simon Baker's character is just wonderfully literate, which is so true to my old man, and just like, my old man could absolutely sit at the Brighton pub for 8 hours and talk about the Broncos, and he could also sit in the reading room in London and talk to a librarian about Tolstoy. Like he could he could do both those things. Yeah. And I wanted to, and I think one of the reasons Boy did sort of connect with people is because we all have that in our families. We all know dads like that.
Yes.
We all know these rogues. Yeah. Who have hearts of gold and past so dark, and they tell you things, you go, oh my God, Uncle Larry, I can't believe you did that. But also Uncle Larry, he's like, oh, what do you mean you wrote a book of poetry, Uncle Larry? When you know what I mean? It's
the biggest hearts.
Exactly.
And multi-dimensional.
Multi-dimensional, exactly. Yeah, that's a cool thing.
Which is a wonderful note to leave it on. Trent Dalton, thank you very much for joining us on the call sheet.
Thank you, Bryce. It's been a beautiful chat. Thank you.
The final message from our partners at HubSpot. Breeze, their built-in AI, is changing how work gets done. It handles the busy work so you can get back to creative, strategic thinking. And honestly, couldn't we all use a bit more of that?